if you could only choose 5 people who you think were the greatest influences on Keller that kind of feature prominently in his teaching on the Christian life after, pulling all kinds of data, right, for this book from
Hmm.
sermons to, conference
Hmm.
speeches to books. And I mean, a lot of, I mean, the footnotes are almost as long as the book, right? End notes. So
Hmm.
it's really, pretty wild how much research I'm sure went into this book. But what would you say? Who are those main influences?
I would say Ed Clowney, in particular, on Christ-centered preaching, seeing Jesus as the hero of all of Scripture. I would say Jonathan Edwards and C.S. Lewis and John Newton, all of whom I think helped Keller understand how to reach people's imaginations and speak to the heart. And then the fifth one might be less expected, but I would say maybe someone like a David Powlison, who has also gone to be with the Lord, but founded CCEF, which is a
Yeah.
biblical counseling ministry. And I know Tim read every article published in every CCEF journal while he was alive. And I think one of the underrated aspects of Tim's preaching is how, in many ways, his sermon application was just biblical counseling in public.
Mm.
Feeling that he was climbing into your conscience, into your heart, poking you in the idols. A lot of that's coming from not just being steeped in doctors of the soul like John Newton from times past, but also in more modern contributors like
Yeah.
his friend David Powlison.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating, and to just, kind of listen to his sermons and things again, I think that really does come out. I want to hop back though to one thing that you said. You mentioned Ed Clowney, really well known for preaching Christ in the Old Testament and
Hmm.
those type of things. And you kind of start with the content that you start to summarize with a chapter on Tim Keller and his teaching, what was most important to him, right? Of presenting Jesus Christ as the hero of the biblical
Hmm.
story.
Yeah.
So how did his commitment to seeing Christ in all the scriptures influence all of his teaching?
Well, it came about in stages. He tells the story, which I recount in the book, of being a young seminary student and still being a little put off by certain things in the Old Testament and certainly confused by how everything in the Old Testament fits together with the Christian gospel. And he was actually attending R.C. Sproul's Ligonier Valley Study Center in Pennsylvania, a Q&A session that Dr. Alec Matier was hosting for RC. Some pastors, preachers will know who Alec Matier is. He's written some really helpful Old Testament commentaries. But anyway, this is back in summer of 1972. And that's actually, I think, when the summer between college and seminary for Tim. And a student asked Dr. Matier to explain the relationship between Old Testament Israelites and New Testament Christians today. And Tim never forgot Matier's answer. He said, and I'll just read here, he said that, he asked the group to imagine how the Israelites under Moses would have given their testimony. And he suggested it would have sounded something like this. We were in a foreign land, in bondage, under the sentence of death. But our mediator, the one who stands between us and God, came to us with the promise of deliverance. We trusted in the promise of God, took shelter under the blood of the Lamb, and he let us out. Now we are on our way to the promised land. We are not there yet, of course, but we have his law to guide us, and through blood sacrifice, we have his presence in our midst. So he will stay with us until we get to our true country, our everlasting home. And that left Keller kind of thunderstruck because he realized not only has salvation all along been by grace, not works, but that it's also been by costly atonement from the very beginning. And so I would say Dr. Matier and then later Dr. Clowney in helping him to see that, helping Keller to see that Christ is not just a personality we find in Scripture. Christ is not even just the main subject of Scripture. He is the main point. He
Mm.
is what every Old Testament book is on its tiptoes, leaning forward, looking toward, and anticipating.